I'm excited this afternoon to be joined by Paul O'Brien. He's the vice president of Oxfam America, and he is the author of the new book, Power Switch: How We Can Reverse the Extreme Income, or How We Can Reverse Extreme Income Inequality. Paul, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Benjamin.
The pleasure is ours. I am familiar with the focus of the work of Oxfam America, particularly the work to fight against income inequality, but particularly poverty. Could you tell the audience about the efforts that you engage in at Oxfam?
Yeah, sure. So we are a worldwide influencing network of Oxfams, many of which now are their own independent boards in places like India, Brazil, South Africa, China. They work with us here in the US and in other Northern European countries to try and shape answers to the systemic roots of poverty. So we used to be one of these organizations that essentially brought stuff from the rich parts of the world and tried to get it to the poor parts of the world. But we eventually realized that really wasn't making it, A, enough difference, and B, we were ignoring the stuff in our own backyards. So now we're this worldwide influencing network. Yes, we still try to meet real needs in real time, but it's a much smaller part of our work. What we do now a lot is analyze what is driving poverty and try and force policymakers, both in the United States and in those countries that I mentioned, to tackle it. And the big thing that we've sort of put our finger on in the last decade is that extreme inequality is driving many of the problems we see in our world, including what we've seen in this country in the last few days.
This is a fascinating conversation for me because one of the things I just kind of casually observed is something that you all actually work on. Poverty is a policy decision, right? Homelessness is a policy decision. It's not as though we do not have enough resources to actually make sure that this level of poverty doesn't exist. Could you speak about that from a policy perspective, but not even policy so much as the choices that allow poverty to continue to exist?
Well, I love that framing. Thanks, Benjamin, because we agree with you entirely. It is about choice. It's about the policy decisions that drive ultimate outcomes for people who are either milking it or who are on the wrong end of power equations. So, where to start? Just take this pandemic and what we've been seeing. Because of the kind of policy choices that were made even coming into the pandemic, those who already were super wealthy made out like bandits. One of the pieces of Oxfam research was that if Jeff Bezos chose to, he could literally walk around to every single one of his, at the time we did the research late last year, 875,000 employees, in hand each of them a $105,000 check, and still have more money than he started the pandemic with in March. That's just his excess profits during the pandemic. That's 105 grand to nearly 1 million people. So what we are sort of seeing and have tried to analyze and raise attention to is how much folks who already have too much power, too much wealth, are able to use the lack of good policy frameworks to get more. Right. And at the same time, we're not seeing the kind of real commitment to addressing and literally switching power, switching where wealth lies, so that more people, working people, people of all colors, and particularly in the working class, have a greater opportunity both to live the American dream, but to lift themselves out of poverty all around the world.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed the passion with which you speak when you talk about those policy choices and the type of income inequality, the wealth that was amassed by Jeff Bezos during this. I mean, it is enough to make you that upset. But underneath these policy decisions is the idea that greed is good. That greed and the pursuit of profit at all expenses is how this system should work. So what do you all, in terms of policy and what you're fighting for at Oxfam, how do you approach this in terms of changing the hearts and the minds, not only of the people, but also the leadership in terms of policy that could reverse poverty?
Yes, lovely. So in the end of the day, Oxfam is a very optimistic organization. I am an optimistic person. I wrote Power Switch because I believed we've reached a moment in history where we are waking up to the fact that the economic model that said greed is good is now essentially bankrupt. It's bankrupting the planet, but it's also bankrupt in terms of having a political mandate that is making enough people feel, hey, you know what? I'm getting my chance at the dream. What we saw in this election, I wrote this book, I took a chance, the publisher took a chance. I said, you know, the Trump idea and argument isn't going to win. They may get out a lot of votes, but there are more people in this country who are either moderates or who are progressives, coming from all different colors and from all different issues. And they are going to show up. They're going to show up in states in the Senate elections, and they're going to show up in the presidency, and they are going to deliver a power switch. So I'm not interested in the question, will Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win? I'm interested in the question, what are we going to do with that once they're in power? And our optimistic analysis is that the folks who just got elected in both the Senate and in the White House are going to say, you know what, we can't just normalize things and expect the people who got us elected in Georgia and around the country to be happy. We're going to have to go to the next level. We're going to have to come up with new economic models outside of greed is good, and let's just make sure people at the top do well. So what the book lays out, and I'm basically borrowing a lot of Oxfam ideas, is what are all the policies that we are going to need in place to actually redistribute income and opportunities so more people can enjoy the benefits of this economy and society.
The name of the book is Power Switch, How We Can Reverse Extreme Inequality. Give us some of those things that you talk about in the book that can actually be done to reverse this income inequality.
Well, the heart of it is, power. It's a lot of it's about political power and how that works. We're seeing that happen at the moment, but it's also about money. We've got to get to the heart of how money flows, how it politically captures our system, and how it either creates opportunity or denies it. So we've got to ask, where's the big money, and how are we going to get out of tinkering around the edges and reinvest in people all around the world to give them more economic opportunity. The United States plays this completely outsized role, even for the size of its economy. If US leadership decided to do so, it could unlock literally trillions of dollars to stop people falling into poverty, either by creating global reserves, by canceling debt, by making deals with countries on how they start to manage their economies going forward. Perhaps the single thing I'd say to you that's going to be most important, that again, the US is the big player, is how do we end this pandemic? How do the vaccines, most of which are being produced in the United States safely at the moment, how do they get to countries, not just to elites who sit at the top of the food chain in all places in sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America, but everywhere? What is the US going to do to make sure that the solutions we find now in terms of economics, in terms of vaccines, are shared generally? So that's what the book is about. It's a lot of what Oxfam is working on, and it feels meaningful in this moment and full of promise.
And no, that and it sounds exciting in just the way you're conveying it, to be quite honest with you. But in terms of like the steps, what's next? Like in terms of your analysis and your work at Oxfam, what is the next most practical step in terms of turning this country and quite frankly, this planet around as it pertains to poverty? Because that seems like a utopian idea,
yes.
But as you have been drilling down and studying it, you have to have these next couple of steps already. You already know what we need to do. So tell us, what are some of those steps?
Yeah, okay. I go into more detail in the book, but in the short of it is progressives, particularly progressives, cannot rest now, even after the big victories of the last couple of months. We are going to have to lock in quick wins early on in the Biden administration. We're going to have to insist the Biden administration cancel the Muslim ban, stop discriminating against people from sub-Saharan Africa, refugees, end the return to Mexico policy. We're going to have to get more people to realize we've got to deal with gender justice and kill the global gag rule. We've got to get quick wins, which we can basically do, by the way, without waiting for Congress. Once you build up that momentum, we've got to start talking with this new Senate and Congress to deliver economic solutions for Americans and around the world. And that can be done in the first 100 days, as long as they don't think they're just trying to revert things to normal. Because in the end of the day, Joe Biden is essentially a moderate kind of guy. Progressives are going to have to step up right now and over the coming months, which is why I love your show, because I do think you're pushing people to act, not just to talk. And to do so in a progressive way. And I think that that's what it's going to take, a lot of progressive energy now, not to declare victory too soon.
And that's so important. We have a couple of minutes here left. Could you take a moment and tell the audience like what they can do then, right? What they can do to help in this fight as an individual, because sometimes it feels hopeless. And if you could, with the last time that you have, if you would tell them how they can get your book and how they can get up with you.
Yes. So you can get it in most independent bookstores. It's called Power Switch. It does the last chapters lay out some guidance for activists on what they shouldn't waste their time doing and what they should be thinking about doing, how to exercise influence and power right now in this moment. It's still going to be about national and state and municipal level politics at some level. It's still going to be about community organizing to get our issues across the line. It's still going to be coming together across our issues where Black, brown, white people are going to work together across different issues, climate activists, gender activists. We're going to have to bring together that big tent. And there are very specific suggestions in the book on how to do that. So I'm really glad that you offered me that chance to say, hey, give the book a read. If you like it, check me out on redistributepower@gmail.com. That's what I'm all about. And I'd love to have a conversation with anyone who's reading it.
I absolutely love your energy, and I'm definitely going to pick up the book myself. And I look forward to your continued work and all that you're doing. Thanks so much, Paul. Thank you so much for what you're doing at Oxfam and what you're doing against the fight against poverty.
Thanks, Benjamin. And thanks for your show, and good luck in the year to come. It's going to be a tough time for a lot of people, but also hopefully a time of hope and transformation.
Absolutely. Paul O'Brien, Vice President of Oxfam America. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.